IceFrog's a talented game designer. I mean, he really is. I don't think anyone can deny that. He is really, truly amazing at his job. But he's also a hack fraud who fills in patch notes by listing bug fixes, fucking feature updates, and he can't keep getting away with it! Bloodstone had this bug where if you had more than one of them, the mana regen amplification on both of them would compound onto each other and pretty much enable a Storm Spirit, and let's be honest, nobody else, to basically dominate games because of an upwards of 500 mana regen per second. It's been in the game since last patch, but it's Bloodstone, you know? Nobody even buys that thing anymore, unless you are an aforementioned Storm Picker. But I'm not that. I don't even think I've played a single game of Storm Spirit, or any hero with a Bloodstone, for the entire time that game-winning bug was in the client. Now, if it was Meteor Hammer with this glitch, an item less popular than Bloodstone, but also an item that I would personally go in any game that I can, you could bet your ass that the bug would have been eradicated before it even came out. And I don't even know why. I mean, I've been nothing but nice to IceFrog for the entire time I've known his name. Oh wait, yeah, I forgot. I have a tendency to also call him a hack fraud. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Karma. So with that said, it should be clear that we are talking about items now. Or most items. There's, you know, that one scepter-shaped item that kind of has to be separated from the rest, because if I start talking about it, then we won't get to the next item down for another 2 hours. So, skipping over that, Drums of Endurance is an item support spy, correct? So take a guess if it was nerfed or buffed. Mana regen being lowered from 1.5 to 1.25 means it's ever so slightly worse as the mana regen option of the handful or so mid-game aura items. Going back to the Aura Wars video that you, I guess now that I think about it, never actually saw unless you were a Patreon pledger. Whoops! Well, in that video, Helm of the Dominator was obviously S tier, with Guardian Greaves, Assault Cuirass, Pipe and Vlads following behind. And there was also the strange item called Ring of Aquila? I don't know, but it must have been pretty good to be on the same tier as two 5k gold items. I wonder whatever happened to it. Oh well. You'll also notice that apart from Headdress down in F tier on account of it unfortunately just not being really useful on its own and more of just a component of other better aura items, the lowest aura items in the game at that point were Mechanism and Drums. So has that changed? Well, surprisingly, in a year, very little has actually happened to Mech. Like all aura items, including Drums, Mech was given a radius increase from 900 to 1200, which is, you know, a bit of a change. It was made a little bit cheaper, and the meta around it sort of pushed itself towards a very aura-heavy mid-game pushing lineup. So overall, Mech sort of enjoyed a bit of a renaissance. And what happened to Drums of Endurance? Well, 720 brought with it the new item Crown, so Drum of Endurance started building itself out of that. A couple of extra stats and a cheaper price, that's good. But then 721 came along, reverting Drum's 6% movement speed bonus back to 20 static. Oh, and yeah, removing Drum's aura. Probably should have mentioned that first. Yeah, it turns out Drum of Endurance is the worst aura item in the game, because apart from the 6-second duration during the active, it doesn't even give an aura. The 722 change to its mana is just a nail in the coffin. Drums suck! Eye of Skadi was rebalanced a bit. It's a little less slow on melee, a little bit more slow on ranged heroes, and for both types of enemy the effect lasts for 3 seconds. For melee it used to last for 5 seconds, so that's a pretty major drop, but for ranged it only lasted 2.5 seconds, meaning that it's kind of an irrelevant buff. Overall though, Skadi just seems to be the same item it always was. So, I mean, why are we talking about it? Well, because of the 4 heroes who buy Eye of Skadi the most, all of them were completely screwed over when it came to IceFrog handing out Aghs buffs. And Aghs is, in a lot of ways, really comparable to Eye of Skadi. Stats-wise, it is pretty much Eye of Skadi light, while Skadi costs 5,500 gold and gives 25 to every stat, and then 225 to health and 250 to mana. Aghs costs 4,200 gold and gives 10 to every stat and 175 to health and mana. So if you ignored the spell's actives, you could say picking up an Aghs is perfectly fine when you're just too short on cash to scrounge up for Skadi. But then you add on the Aghs upgrade, and usually that tips the scale in Aghs' favour. Unless you are a Medusa, Terrorblade, or Slark. Spoiler alert, all 3 of these heroes used to buy Skadi, and all of them now have horrendous Aghs upgrades. So just by virtue of that, Skadi got an indirect buff. But of course it did, right? I mean, Skadi isn't a support item, so it's clearly not going to be nerfed. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for the next every item. Everything got nerfed. Guardian Greaves was knocked to from an HP regen aura and bonus armor when below 20% health of 4.5 and 15 to an HP regen aura and bonus armor of 3.5 and 10. Pretty heavy nerf. Helm of the Dominator now has an extra 300 gold recipe. Why? I have no idea. Nothing else changed. Literally all of the heroes in Dota just forgot how to mash a ring of health, a headdress, and one singular glove of haste into a helmet without the use of a recipe to guide them. I mean, it's so obvious, right? You wrap the ring, and then you put the glove on your head. Okay, yeah, maybe needing to pick up a recipe is justified. Still sucks though. Nerf. But what do we have here? Observer wards are like the classic support item, and they're not nerfed, so maybe things are looking up. I mean, looky here, a cost decrease from 75 to 50. That's a whole 33% off. Now, we could save more money, buy more wards, place more wards, and give the enemy team even more golden XP as a reward for killing them. It's nearly double. The gold you earn from destroying an observer ward at 40 minutes in is 260 gold. That's enough to buy 5 and a 5th observer wards yourself, or better yet, enough to not do that, because placing wards that the enemy destroys pretty much earns them 5 times the amount you would have made had you not placed the ward in the first place. With that logic, every ward that you don't place is a guaranteed 50 gold saved because, I mean, obviously, that's how much it costs, but also a potential 200 to 300 gold increase that you have denied the enemy team. And that's ignoring the XP bounty that they'd also get, which would be around 290 at 40 minutes. Dude, this is some blasphemous rhetoric I am spouting right now. Daring to suggest that wards shouldn't be bought? That's madness. And yeah, it is. I agree. Wards really should be bought. That's kind of the problem. They have to be bought. They're so useful. It's just, with this update, there is even more pressure put on your poor supports to not place them anywhere where they'd likely get dewarded. That's pretty awful. I mean, I never think that support players should be punished for attempting to support. Anyway, nerf. Pipe of Insight got an HP regen reduction. Nerf. Rod of Atos got a strength and agility reduction. You could probably get a Rod of Atos on a carry, but you could also get it on a support, so nerf. And then finally the Sentry Ward. I mean, well, we've talked about this before, right? Sentries are cheaper than when they once were, so that's good, and sentries have never given gold or XP, so that won't be a problem. The actual crutch is that now sentry wards have a stock limit like observer wards do. Griefers and actual supporting teammates both despair, because it's impossible to just buy out a bunch of sentries and go on your way. There's a shop limit, but not an inventory limit of 10, with a replenish rate of 70 seconds and the game starting with 4 sentries already stocked. 70 seconds doesn't really seem too bad, right? I mean, it's just a little over a minute. Way less than observer wards, until you realize that that's 70 seconds per ward. If you buy all 10, it would take nearly 12 minutes for all 10 to be available again. And everyone knows you burn through sentries way faster than observers. In one team fight, you could find yourself placing 4 sentries within 4 seconds of each other while you're trying to pin down a weaver or something. Overall, it's just making a support's life harder. Invis heroes are going to dominate, at least for a wee while, and while I'm sure everybody appreciates any changes that makes griefing harder, well, I guess everyone but griefers, but that's a given, I don't think this is really a step in the right direction. When they changed Courier, so you could only ever have one, that was great. I mean, griefers bought as many as they could and fed them, while in a normal game you'd only usually need the one. In really niche scenarios, I'm sure you could make the argument that that is a shame. I mean, you used to be able to buy a Courier and then tell your team that this was only for you, and you could do things like sending it to the secret shop while the enemy was around, on the off chance that it makes it all the way there. You can't really do that when everyone uses the same Courier. So when that Courier dies, everyone is screwed. But, I mean, I digress. Except for crazy niche scenarios, it was a good fix. The Courier thing, good. But people legitimately buy stacks on stacks of sentries in normal games. Oh, well, I guess they used to. Nerf. And then wouldn't you know it, everything else is a nerf too. But if you're feeling down after all of that, don't even bother. Those nerfs pave the way for a whole flurry of buffs coming your way. Unless you don't play carriers, in which case, I I have no good news for you. Those buffs are for heroes. Heroes like Abaddon. Abaddon, like a lot of heroes, got a pretty neat buff of extra attack speed at the start of the game. Just for the record, this isn't really anything too crazy. I mean, it doesn't fundamentally change the equations Dota does to calculate people's attack speeds and all that. It doesn't really relate to base attack time, and it doesn't really exponentially increase anyone's attacks per second. What it essentially is just starting the game with an extra Gloves of Haste or something. But with that said, you're starting the game with a free Gloves of Haste. I mean, awesome. Abaddon, of course, especially benefits from it, as would anyone who depends on stacking hits on a target to proc something. Ursa has Fury Swipes, and Monkey King and Abaddon have Jingu Mastery and Curse of Avernus, two different spells that nonetheless both require the user to hit someone 4 times. Unlike Monkey King benefiting from attack speed or Echo Saber, Abaddon also depends on a bit of attack speed. Now he has it. With 722, he's pretty much covered. Oh yeah, and he's got a pretty neat Scepter upgrade, but I mean, we'll talk about that later. Ancient Apparition, though, is one of the... oh my god. Only supports that have been buffed, pretty much. Ice Vortex is surprisingly a spell that AA has. I mean, nobody ever thinks about it, but you can't really deny that it's right there, tucked in between Cold Feet and Chilling Touch. 2 actually notable spells. 2 spells that people actually talk about. But hey, whatevs. The actual reason I bring him up is that IceFrog finally removed Ice Blast from being seen on the minimap if you have True Sight. It was kinda goofy that that was a thing. In theory, you could send your Ice Blast all the way from your fountain to their fountain right as that low health enemy limps back to it after only narrowly avoiding death at the hands of someone else on your team. In theory, you'd be able to snipe that kill and confirm it for your team. In practice though, there's about a good hour or so of leeway in between the marker being sent out, the enemy seeing it, or even the enemy not seeing it and being told about it by his teammates who did see it, and then the Ice Blast actually hitting. Against all but the newest of Dota players, you were never going to sneakily send an Ice Blast to get them. There was just so many ways to know about it and avoid it, but that's all changed now. Expect 1,000 of these, give or take, in pro play montages in the coming weeks, but I mean, who knows, maybe TI9 is won by an AA sniping someone in the final game. You truly, truly never know. But that's getting ahead of ourselves, right? We're talking about heroes in 722. Up next, Bloodseeker.